Hey, y'all. Welcome to The Dope Effect, a podcast dedicated to exploring the many layers of drug addiction, mental health, and a host of other taboo topics. On this platform, we will not shy away from the hard conversations, but will intentionally disrupt all that you have internalized about addicts and addiction. Be prepared to expand your knowledge, challenge your perspective, and be motivated to action. You will not leave this space the same way you came. I am your gracious host, Kim Mathis, and because I was born addicted, I am passionate about helping others live a life that they can be addicted to. Let's go. Time to get into some dope stuff. Hi, everyone, and welcome to another amazing episode of The Dope Effect. With me today is my daughter, Kennedy, who is a certified spiritual life coach pursuing a degree in integrative healthcare. Today, we are talking about addiction in the very non-traditional sense, alienating the idea of substance or alcohol abuse, but highlighting the addict that lives in every single one of us, and that is the phone addict. Now, this is problematic because I read that most phone users pick up their phones over 2,600 times a day. So what exactly does that say about our need for phones and our overstimulation? What do you think?
Well, first of all, that's average. I honestly think that was probably way before everything became dependent on social media. One of the main things is, again, like cell phone addiction, social media addiction is because is exactly what you said in one of your previous episodes, as like it gives people a dopamine hit. Every single time that you're getting a notification, it's telling your brain like, oh, like this is satisfying to me, and then it's something that becomes a habit, something that you seek out, and it's so minute. People don't even notice how many times they pick up their phone or how many times. Yeah,
but we're getting high off likes and shares and comments, just like a traditional addict gets high off of their drug of choice or a drink.
Same. It's just not doing as detrimental effects to your physical health, but it is definitely affecting your mental health.
Right.
But for some, especially for women, it is pretty drastic.
And I tell you, when people talk about phone addiction, we like to talk about everybody else, the teenagers or the little kids that we like to give devices to pacify their attention. But there is literally, at least in half of the population that uses cell phones, we're all addicts in some way. We just don't like to admit it. I'm going to exclude myself from that conversation because I don't want to feel like, oh, I'm actually addicted to my phone. But anytime you can put your phone down and you can't go, 30 minutes or an hour or
it's
even
really
2 hours, without picking it up.
It's very problematic. I think it teaches us something about it. It teaches us as a society in some extent, why are we not able to be present in our everyday life? Why are we constantly looking for some sort of gratification, some sort of stimulation? Why are we having FOMO, the fear of missing out of something? Why are these aspects so important to us, and why do they run our everyday life?
Well, they run our everyday life because it's like instant gratification. Just like when you get high off of, your first hit of whatever your drug of choice is, or you take that first drink of whatever your preferred alcoholic beverage is, we feel like, we're missing out on something. And you have that need for instant gratification, especially on social media, because things are changing so fast, and you can't really keep up with everybody's lifestyles and the trends and what makes sense, and you think you're missing out on something, but really it's causing more damage to our mental state than it is, to anything else. Like you said, you're not present in the moment, it causes anxiety and restlessness, and then we start to compare ourselves to other people.
The comparison kills. So one of the things, first of all, of course, like you said, it's instant gratification, but it's also again, like people do with actual drugs, they're avoiding something. I've seen countless amount of times where in moments that you should be present or that phones aren't necessary, people have a habit of making it necessary.
But because, you know, we're so addicted to the screen, it allows us to just remove ourselves from whatever situation, from our parents, from dinner, from just anything, from traditional conversations. And it's one of the reasons why people feel like they can even do online learning and online schooling, because
I'm gonna stick with the online learning people. I love online learning. So I'm not.
But I mean, you can do it on your phone, and because the phone has become so much more than just a way to communicate, it's the way we learn, it's the way we do business, you know, it's the way that
that's
we do everything.
Business literally like took social media by storm. Like, I don't think you can have a business without having a social media account. Right. But the bigger
some kind of presence.
You have to have a social media presence, and they're, you know, businesses are relying solely on influencer marketing now, and so that's a big thing. You have to be on social media for that. A lot of people don't like to sit with themselves, and that's why they are so eager or addicted to being on their phone. Like, they literally cannot, because if you sit with yourself, then you have to face some of your inner demons. You have to you have to, you know, really feel some of your emotions. You can't repress, and that makes people uncomfortable. And so if that makes them uncomfortable, they're going to do everything to avoid that. And it might not be in the traditional sense of addiction, as far as like alcoholism or drug addiction, but then they resort to being on social media and having really, really high screen times, and you know, that's
because it numbs, just like a traditional drug.
It's like a fantasy world. You go and you get to see into quote unquote people's lives. You don't really get to see like the real authentic version, but you get to, you know, escape into some fantasy world that doesn't actually exist.
Exactly, like traditional addiction. It numbs whatever you're feeling, whatever you're going through, and then you get to kind of put it on the back burner and then deal with it another day. And then the moment you have to face that thing again, then you resort back to the same behavior of just numbing and making it go away. Even though all you're doing is masking the problem, you're not really making it go away. But again, like you were saying, when we're talking about what this does for us and how it makes you not present, it's like, not only do you not have time to sit with yourself and sit with your emotions, like, how do you have a spiritual life? How do you have a prayer life, or, you know, connect to a higher source?
I mean, to your point, the spiritual life is pretty much non-existent. And even if it is existent on your social media, like if the algorithm does like give you a few like nudges here and there, like, oh, like this Bible verse, or
you can't really focus on it because you're overstimulated by all the other stuff, and then you look at it for a second and you just scroll on to the next thing.
Our attention spans have decreased significantly since we've first just gotten TikTok in general. TikTok was a short form platform, and that's actually where most, like, I would say most people from about like 18 to 24 are addicted to the most is TikTok. Like, I could probably tell you 20 people off the bat that will scroll TikTok all day and not even realize it until like the day's over and they've done nothing. Consuming.
But it's interesting that you mentioned that age group 18 to 24. So let's stay there for just a second.
Yeah, I'd really probably go down a little bit to 16.
Because, well, even younger than that, because what I was going to say is that we have started children off so young, you know, with phone addictions and tablet addictions and just some type of device, you know, where we are creating a space where they don't have to be present, because all we do is stick a phone in their face.
Yeah, they call them iPad kids because they weren't the kids that went outside and played on the trees. Like, they're the ones that are getting a phone to watch YouTube but that's really because like our patience level, our tolerance level has dropped significantly, like as a society, that like parents, you know, the easiest thing to do is like, oh, here, just entertain yourself. You know? Instead of like actually be like, no, like go play outside, like go pick some flowers, like whatever.
Or engage with your kids, because it's lazy parenting, right? And I know that, you know, sometimes, and I'm victim of it too. I remember you guys having, you know, VTech toys and iPads. Now, it was nowhere near as, you know, drastic.
We also were coming up in the age of social media. So like nowadays, like they have kids shows on YouTube and certain things like that. And those platforms, iPhones, like we were not at iPhone like 14. We were at the beginning of the iPhone. So, I mean, nothing was ever as developed as it is now. So it's way worse.
Right. But it is a problem that when we talk about addiction, specifically phone addiction or tablet addiction or computer addiction in the non-traditional sense, we're talking about people as young as age 8 and 9 that can be addicts, because all we do is put something in their face and overstimulate them. So we're literally creating a younger and younger generation in society of people who have no patience, who are not present, who are instantaneous, who want that instant gratification, you know, just like a traditional drug would. Right. So it's like, how do we combat this though? How do we start to scale back on society's view that we have to be plugged in all the time, all day, that, you know, we are not satisfied if we miss something? What do you think we can start doing to start scaling back, specifically the younger kids? I know it's easy for us to say, we'll put them in a sport or give them a book to read. I mean, there's so many other avenues, but it's just not the way of the world currently. So in this way of the world, with this microwave generation, with everything being so instantaneous, how do we combat phone and social media addiction in younger kids?
Well, I know for me, when I first started really feeling overstimulated with social media and like phones, I set screen time on certain apps. So like if I knew I spent a lot of time on TikTok or I spent a lot of time on Instagram, and I still have screen time to this day, I set a time limit of how long I could be on the app per day. And if I'm scrolling and it's like, oh, time's up, I actually would use that time and be like, oh, like, because you don't, like I said, you don't really realize how long you're scrolling until like that time's up.
Right, because it does go by so fast. And you just get lost in.
Yeah. And so yeah, I would recommend setting screen time for sure, because that's one way to limit
kids
overstimulation for one.
Okay, so now that we're talking about you know, kind of how we combat this, not only in younger kids, but just all of us in general, because whether you want to admit it or not, that phone addict, that social media addict looks like anybody from 8 to 80. You know, it just really depends on, you know, what your lifestyle is and, you know, how much that you actually use the phone for. But there are some ways that we can start to eliminate or at least face the the phone and social media addictions that we have. And here are a couple of ways, and we can talk about this. So according to becomingaminimalist.com, one thing to do is to set aside one day of the week where you don't use the phone at all. Set aside one day of the week where you go absolutely phoneless.
I don't even think that's like realistic though. Like, at least for me, I work on my phone.
But I don't think they're saying don't use it at all, in the sense like if there's some type of emergency or something like that. But I do think that it's fair that, let's just say for instance, and it can be done. We can come up with all kind of excuses, but it can be done. So if you set aside one day of the week, that just means that you're not going to be consciously getting on the phone. Now, of course, you know, if there's some type of emergency or something like that, then you use it. But say for instance, you had to go to a funeral or some type of really, you know, private event or ceremony or something where you can't be on the phone, or you walk into a government building and you're there for some extended period of time, they don't even allow phones. So you have to put it aside anyway, whether you like it or not. You just identify the reason for putting it down a little different. So it makes you feel a little bit better, right? But when we're talking about putting it aside one day of the week, we can make that happen. Now, I'm not saying put it aside and don't use it for emergencies, but put it aside meaning don't consciously use it. And instead of working on the phone, maybe work on the computer or work on the iPad, or, you know, just kind of be intentional, because there are times when you do need self-care days. And what if, you know, you're just taking a self-care day where you go to the spa all day? You can't have a phone there. So it's possible. We just have to, it's not comfortable and it's not, you know, usually logical, but that's one idea, is pick one day of the week and put the phone aside.
One of the things that we learn, like when you're in like the mental health space or when you're in like the spiritual space, you know that your subconscious mind runs 95% of your life. And so it's you know, where your habits are, your beliefs are, everything. And one of the biggest things is like what you consume at night right before bed, and what you're consuming the 15 minutes that you're waking up from your sleep. And so one of the biggest things that I actually probably would recommend would be to not touch your phone for the first hour of waking up for one,
right,
and not to touch your phone for the first hour of going to bed. And in those interim periods of time, I would use that for either self-care. In the mornings, I would definitely say like to use that as like your grounding. So like I would say meditation, and using that as your moment to be present in the morning. That's going to program your subconscious on whatever your guided meditation was, or just give you more space in your own mind,
right,
to be there and not to have like the stress or overthinking,
to be free in your thoughts, and to be present.
No overstimulation.
Yeah, well, that's good, because that leads me into number 2, which is another way to combat overuse, social media addiction, phone addiction, and overuse, is setting boundaries, like you just said. So not using it that hour immediately after you wake up and that hour before you go to bed. But that would require settings, like putting settings on your phone where you purposefully set the screen time and how much you're going to allow yourself to use the phone throughout the day, so that you're not just sitting at a red light and on the phone, or you're not just, waiting in line and we're on the phone. We're so anxious all the time that we have to be doing something. It's funny because I saw a meme not too long ago where there was a family having dinner in a restaurant, and their food had not come to the table, but nobody at the table was talking. The person that took the picture, every person was looking down like this, and they were on their phones, defeating the whole purpose of having the family dinner. So so if you set screen times, and then be intentional about those moments when you're together with people, so you can be present, like you said, then that would be good. So that's number 2. Another way to try to combat phone addiction and social media addiction is by bolstering apps on your phone that encourage you to focus or to relax. And some of the apps are, wonderful apps that are built in, and they limit your time. So it's kind of like a settings thing as well. But throughout the day, there's daily exercises where the app will remind you to take a breather or put the phone down.
So I know Apple Watches do that. I know they say like, hey, like, use this to calm down, like use this for meditation.
The fact that we have to have an app to remind us to be mindful is literally insane. But some additional apps that may help is one called Space, another is called Forest, and Moment, and Flipped, FLIPD, Flipped, no E.
I really like the app Calm. It has meditation. Does it have that on there?
No, Calm is not on this list, but I know exactly what you're talking about.
I really like the app Calm. It has a lot of integrations in it. It talks about, it has guided meditations on there. Mm-hmm. It has like journal prompts and stuff like that. And it also has like, some people who sleep with like maybe rain noises or something. It has stuff like that.
Right.
And then there's an app called Moonly, and that like gives you affirmations every single day.
Right.
But they like, bring you back down to being mindful. Yeah. It's a fun app. I like it.
And here's another one. Here's another tip to combating phone addiction and social media addiction. And I really like this one. This is one of my favorites. I'm not very good at this, but I'm going to start doing it. But it is don't charge your phone next to your bed. And I think that is obvious reasons why we shouldn't do that, because it's so easily accessible for you to just grab it and look at it. And like you were saying, that first hour of the day when you're waking up and you're trying to get ready for the day and just being mindful and being present, the first thing most of us do is grab the phone. What did I miss?
Immediately.
What email did I miss? What, post did I miss?
It's the dopamine.
Yeah, exactly. The dopamine.
To be released.
So don't charge your phone next to your bed. I have not started doing this yet, but I am definitely going to do that, because it does become, just a habitual thing, that whether you're actually looking for information or not, or, it's really necessary to read 50 emails.
It's an addiction. It's like you literally don't even realize that your brain is going there. It's such a habit that you just, that's why it says like 2,600 times a day you're picking up your phone. You literally might be looking at the time, or you might just, and it's so funny, like how many times have you like closed out Instagram just to like go right back to the same app on accident? Like,
exactly.
Like, oh my God. And that's how
or you check your emails and okay, I answered that, or there's nothing new, so back to social media I go.
I mean, it's ridiculous. I cannot tell you how many times I closed out TikTok and literally swiped up on the thing just to go right back to TikTok. And it's like, what are you doing?
What are you doing? What are you doing? I think we're all guilty of doing that. Okay, so here's another tip for combating phone addiction, and it is to put your phone away when you walk in the door. So that kind of is in line with what we said about, putting it aside for a day. Maybe not to the extent where you don't, use it for the whole day, but at least if you're consciously trying to set some boundaries for yourself, if you decide, okay, the moment I walk in the door, I'm going to put this phone down at least for 2 or 3 hours so that I can engage with my family, maybe unwind for the day, have dinner, play with the kids, whatever it is, and you understand that I'm not going to miss nothing on that phone. And them emails and social media, all that stuff gonna be there in 2 hours.
There's actually
when I get back
a thing on Amazon, and it was going viral on TikTok. And that's ironic, but it was going viral on TikTok for a while. And it's like a phone cage, and like you can
cage,
a phone jail. Sorry, and you would like put the phone in the jail, and it literally would set a timer for how long you want to put it in there. It won't let you get it out until that time. It literally.
Oh, wow. Order that for me.
So yeah,
I need that. I need that because a lot of times
it's like because you sometimes you don't. I mean, I used to.
I mean, we need those extreme measures though, because if we practice that kind of stuff enough, I know it seems extreme to have a phone in a jail. I mean, physically have a phone locked in a cage, but if we practice that habit enough. Then you would get used to, breaking those bad habits of not really using the phone or needing the phone. And we're forced to find something else to do with our time. Some other way to be productive, some way to be more present with our families or our kids or, whatever it is that we're doing. So I know it sounds extreme, but I mean, sometimes we need those extreme measures because it's a reminder that, okay, you're doing too much. Okay, so my final tip for combating phone and social media addiction is putting a hairband around the phone. So I know this seems simple and probably weird, but it kind of goes back to the idea of the phone jail. Now, though the hairband doesn't stop you from actually using the phone, the purpose of the hairband around the phone is that just what we were talking about earlier. It's that mindfulness. It's that reminding you that, hey, this is the barrier that I'm setting. I shouldn't be using this, so let me not pick it up. Now, it doesn't stop you from picking it up. It's just the mindfulness that, hey, find something else to do with your time. And you put this on here for that reason, so, to try to adhere to some of the barriers that we set in place for ourselves. So, I think those are some really interesting tips.
I think this will help a lot of people who have, I think everyone has a phone addiction in some extent, whether it's like overproduction, being on their phone too much for work, and like that's a form of escapism, or whether they have a form of escapism in actual social media, being like scrolling too much, or engaging in social media too much, just in general, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, all the platforms and stuff like that. So, I mean, I think this should help people, even if you have a minor phone addiction, to be able to understand.
But an addiction is an addiction. It's not necessarily minor. I mean, because either you're a drug addict or you're not. Either you're an alcoholic or you're not. We don't have varying levels of it. I mean, some people, we can argue that's in the court of public opinion, because some people could say, oh, I'm addicted to weed, but that's not as big of a deal as being addicted to heroin, or something a lot stronger. But I mean, it still is an addiction. It still is something that, causes, problems or frustrations in our lives. And, it's just one of those things that we've got to start getting a better handle on.
Then again, it could be circumstantial too. Like, people could have increased social media addiction if they're stressed. Or, if they do, in normal circumstances, if they're at their healthiest, that wouldn't be a case for them. And just like some people might, like, I guess for weed users, like, might use weed more if they are stressed or if they are.
I get that. And the phone is the same way. And that I read somewhere that over 50% of phone owners would admit that they have an addiction to the phone. And over 40% would admit to texting while driving.
I personally use the car as like a mindfulness moment. Like, even if I get stopped at every red light, that overstimulates some people. That's irritating.
Right.
Just because they have such a short
attention span.
But for me, I'm like, nope, that's protecting me from something. I always give alternate meanings. That way I stay mindful. That way I stay present. That way I don't feel that I need to be stimulated by something else.
Right. Because in all reality, it's enough stimulation going on just driving a car, around you.
Dangerous
just with,
in general. I don't understand why you would add the phone. But again, I fall short sometimes. I just am very conscious of it. So
yes,
I make decisions to make sure that I don't do that.
Yep. Well, thank you guys for joining us on this episode of The Dope Effect. We hope that you had as fun of a time as we did talking about phone addiction and social media addiction. And this is the one addiction that lives in just about all of us, or at least half of the population. And though we don't like to identify ourselves as addicts, they look like me and you, some as young as 8 and as old as 80. So this addiction is no respecter of persons. Take it easy, y'all. Be dope. Now, don't forget to check out my book, Dope Girl, on kmathis.com or on Amazon. Dope Girl is more than just a story about addiction. It's a charge for all of us to live our truth and to do it afraid. Because someone else's health and healing may be lying in your words and boldness. It's also a motivational nudge. Though addiction may not be your struggle, you will find yourself in the book because real health starts within. That's my time for today. Y'all take it easy and be dope.